piece. A 2 pound of note and I kill that piece. A 2 pound of note and I kill that piece. This is all the money that me want for. Money, neighbor, money. Money, neighbor, money. Money, I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Stay on the line. Good morning.
Yes.
Because it's not a calling time yet. Be quiet.
Oh, sorry.
Morning, neighbor. Morning. You're welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. Remember, we do the pre-recorded or the replay from 6 to 7 or thereabout, and then I come on live. Always remember that. Good? But this morning, I'm going to mix up the show a little. In that we have a lot of things to talk about. This spyware and the government's invasion of your privacy and the attack on democracy by the PPP. A lot we have to talk about. But I know some people didn't get to call in yesterday and they were anxious to have their say on this situation. And so I'm going to entertain calls intermittently. I also have someone who works in ICT, Information and Communication Technology, who will call, and we are going to continue to have this discussion. You might be wondering where Dr. Hinds is. Dr. Hinds is unable to make today's show because he is unwell. As far as I know, it's not anything life-threatening, so y'all don't go getting worried and so on. He's unwell, right? And I'm sure maybe we'll have him tomorrow. But for today, we'll continue the discussion about who is listening, what freedom you have, what democracy you have. Who are the enablers of the erosion of democracy and freedom of choice and everything in this country? We'll continue that discussion. Call it live. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Thank you for taking my call. Good morning, everyone in diaspora. Privacy. That's basically what you're talking about this morning, and the erosion of privacy. Privacy is a matter as old as time itself. To undermine privacy as Pegasus was designed to do and has been doing around the world, particularly in Guyana. Now, if I were to undermine a lawyer's privacy, a lot of lawyers need to have privacy. For example, let's say, for example, Nigel Hughes is working on the Orange Boston's case. And the government knows all of Nigel Hughes' strategies before he's able to go to the court. That's how situation with the person who was telling me, who works in information technology in Guyana, that they had compromising pictures of Roxanne George, a judge in Guyana. So, when I hear this morning on the show that the Guyana government is very possibly involved in using this type of technology, it makes you wonder, as the guy was saying, if a judge in Guyana, they are compromising photographs of the chief judge in Guyana. I wonder if she even knows about it. You see what I'm saying? Then there is laptop Ramsami with the laptop years ago. So there were discussions between former police commissioner. This is in the public news. There is discussion. Editor. So if the police department is safe, sometimes you're watching me, but you don't know who
always came out. Barra Jack, because it is that information which they use to leverage.
Watching you. You listening to me. Whether Hillary was involved, the government knows all.
And the attack on democracy by the PPP. A lot we have to talk about. But I know some people didn't get to call in yesterday and they were anxious to have their say on this situation. And so I'm going to entertain calls intermittently. I also have someone who works in ICT, Information and Communication Technology, who will call, and we are going to continue to have this discussion. You might be wondering where Dr. Hinds is. Dr. Hinds is unable to make today's show because he is unwell. As far as I know, it's not anything life-threatening, so y'all don't go getting worried and so on. He's unwell, right? And I'm sure maybe we'll have him tomorrow. But for today, we'll continue the discussion about who is listening, what freedom you have, what democracy you have. Who are the enablers of the erosion of democracy and freedom of choice and everything in this country? We'll continue that discussion. Call it live, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Thank you for taking my call. Good morning, everyone in diaspora. Privacy. That's basically what you're talking about this morning, and the erosion of privacy. Privacy is a matter as old as time itself. To undermine privacy, as Pegasus was designed to do and has been doing around the world, particularly in Guyana. Now, if I were to undermine a lawyer's privacy, a lot of lawyers need to have privacy. For example, let's say, for example, Nigel Hughes is working on the Oren Boston's case. And the government knows all of Nigel Hughes' strategies before he's able to go to the court. That's how Nigel Hughes' case can be severely undermined. And that is how also the judiciary system, which is supposed to be upholding a balance of democracy, that's also undermined. I remember someone telling me years ago, well, not years ago, sorry, months ago, that they had some very uncompromising pictures of Rux and George. That's what they were telling me. And I said to myself, what do you mean uncompromising pictures of Rux and George? They said uncompromising pictures of Rux and George. I said, what are you talking about? Nude pictures? So when I hear about Pegasus, you see, people, that's the same way they had information about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton could not believe, as Secretary of State of the United States, that there were uncompromising emails about Hillary. And these emails were alleged to be linked up with deep state and pedophilia, pedophiles, abuse of small children sexually. Now, whether Hillary was involved with that or not, because her privacy was undermined, these things were made public. It's the same situation with the person who was telling me, who works in information technology in Guyana, that they had compromising pictures of Rux and George, a judge in Guyana. So, when I hear this morning on the show that the Guyana government is very possibly involved in using this type of technology, it makes you wonder, as the guy was saying, if a judge in Guyana, they are compromising photographs of the chief judge in Guyana. I wonder if she even knows about it. You see what I'm saying? Then there is laptop Ramsami with the laptop years ago. So there were discussions between former police commissioner Winston Felix years ago. This is in the public news. There is discussions with Cultural News editor. So if the police department is wondering who is safe, sometimes you watching me, but you don't know who watching you. You listening to me, you don't know who listening to you. So it would be in the best interest of the Guyana Judiciary and the Guyana Bar Association, lawyers and union representatives to get to the bottom of it. Because just when you think it's not your business, they came for the Jew. I'm not a Jew, so I'm not concerned. Somebody might got your dirty laundry already in their flash drive, just waiting for the right time. I was asking a person to send me the information on Roxanne George's uncompromising photographs. They said not yet. So I'm still waiting. I said, but if you can't send me the photographs, tell me how many you got. He said he got more than 5. So I said, bro, be careful. Anyway, Mr. Kodaki, thank you for accepting the call this morning. And we must be vigilant, especially the Bar Association, doctors, and persons in the Guyana Joint Services. Things are out there on y'all. It's just a matter of time. Thank you for listening, Mr. Kodaki.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Now, the reality is, those who know the PPP know that the PPP has always been collecting information on folks, especially in public service, because it is that information which they use to leverage and have their way. Right? There's nobody who can tell me that PPP didn't have the filter in Henry Green before they made him commissioner of police. Because even if they didn't, the U.S. had the filter in Henry Green. And the U.S. had advised the PPP not to appoint Henry Green commissioner of police because they had information which connected him to the underworld and which suggested that he was all sorts of things except an angel. And the PPP went right ahead and they appointed him. Why? The PPP likes to appoint people who are of questionable character because they have the dirt on them and so they can control them. It's as simple as that. PPP's politics is strictly about power, right? If you look at the behavior of people like Putin, many would argue that Jagdeo perhaps wants to fashion himself off of Putin. The PPP behaves like the Russians or would like to behave like the Russian. A lot of these psychopaths, that's what I see them as. Are about control and total control of people, of processes. And in terms of people, they will collect all the filth they can on you and they will use that to leverage you. Remember when in the 2000s, when the joint services were hot on the heels of Roger Khan, had him running helter-skelter when Felix decided he was going to carry the fight to the Khan organization, whatever it was, the Phantom or the Killing Squad, whatever. One of the last resort of Khan, or his henchmen, whoever, was to release a recording which Kofi has alluded to, of a conversation between Felix and I think Basil Williams at the time. Okay? With the hope that that was going to basically cause Felix to get cold feet and back off. When that didn't work to a large extent, Roger Kanu did a full-page advertisement in the Kaicho News at the time, saying that he was working for the government. And he detailed some of the things he represented working for the government. When the government changed, or even before the government changed, as a matter of fact, while the PPP was still in office, and the coalition raised certain issues in this society about the treatment of citizens and the behavior of government and so on, and it threatened certain lines of action, the PPP always came out. Barra Jagdeo in particular always came to the fore and say, if you all got the evidence, go right ahead and put it in public. If you all got the balls, go right ahead and put it in public. Because you will be just as embarrassed as you try to embarrass the PPP. Okay? And they were not veiled threats. They were open threats. Jagdeo said forever, we got the dirt on the PNC. We know what you all were doing. During the 2000s, we know what you were doing before, we know what you're doing currently. And you don't get the dirt by being good Christian people, by being angels. You get the dirt by mining the dirt. And that is, I'm saying the PPP has always had a history of spying on its opponent or opponents. And so many a times when you see questionable decisions coming out of the courts, questionable behavior by public officials and so on, you ask yourselves, how is this possible? Why are they doing this or why are they doing that? It is because the PPP has always had the dirt on them. And is not afraid to use it for leverage. And so the acquisition of Pegasus, this spyware, is just in keeping with the PPP's manner of governance. This spy laptop that we talked about was used by Roger Khan as a representative of the PPP, according to him, to triangulate phone calls. Now one has to understand, to triangulate a call, you must first have a number. And so some access must have been given to Roger Khan then to a database of numbers. What were the numbers these quote-unquote criminals were using? Here's a list of the numbers the criminals are using. These will form your database from which you will triangulate and establish other contacts in terms of who they're calling and how frequently they're calling them and how long the conversations are going on for. And then you will triangulate and know what are the locations they usually operate from, where they are while making a call. And a lot of those people are identified in that way. Right? Many persons argue that the laptop was confiscated and went back to the US, while others argue that there were at least 2 of those laptops. I don't know how many there were. But what I know is that the evidence is out there, and it was out there, that this kind of equipment was being used against citizens in this country. Argue and tell me that they were criminals. I am saying, as old people say, the same stick which is used to beat black dog is used to beat white dog. And so, in short, yes, it is used to track criminals, but yet, yes, it is used to also monitor upstanding citizens. One would assume that the judges and magistrates and members of the judiciary and lawyers and so on are not criminal-minded or criminally intent. But like Kofi is alluding to, somebody told him that they have compromising photograph of a leading judicial figure in this country. How did they get them? I never forget that Ram Sarup, what's his name? I think he is the man at Ministry of Trade now. No, he's at Small Business Bureau. What Ram Sarup is. I never forget that Ram Sarup was an ardent critic of the PPP. And he made a sudden swing like Claudette swung to be an ardent supporter and defender of the PPP after he was accused of spying on some of his tenants, video recording some of his tenants. He had a property there in New Garden Street, New Garden and what? I am not sure what that other street is. Is it Amund? No, it couldn't be Amund. It's the street after Amund Street. Anyways, right? Peter Ram Sarup had a property in Queenstown. I don't know if he still has it. At the junction of New Garden and something, the same street that National Data Management has an office. But he was accused of spying on some young ladies who were renting one of his apartments. As a matter of fact, word on the street was that one of the ladies was by Jagdio's fling, girlfriend, whatever. But the argument was that she was used in what one might consider sting operation to tame Ram Sarup. And Ram Sarup became an ardent supporter of the PPP thereafter. One would argue that in an attempt to prevent Forshaw Street, to prevent himself being imprisoned, because the PPP, when the PPP wants to jail you, they will jail you. They only got to put their hand on the evidence. Right? You have to strike a deal somewhere or other. And so I up until this day believe the deal was that we got to filter you. And so you will do our bidding. Right? Ricardo Singh, we will talk about the interview another day, not today. I'm focusing on people's privacy and what this government is doing. We can't talk about everything at one time, otherwise we will not do justice to what we're talking about. Right? And so y'all stop asking me, it's a distraction. Good. So they always collect the filth on you. And many argue that the former opposition leader Joe Armand was forced to be as quote-unquote lame as he was because the PPP has filtered him. Many argue that the powers that be in the PPP, in the AP and UFC, were reluctant to prosecute the likes of Jagdeo and Ashni Singh and Anil Nandlal and all of them. For crimes committed while they were in office, because they were afraid that the PPP had filtered them and would make them public. And so they had to tread lightly. And I have no doubt that the PPP had been collecting any government in office for 23 years and smelling itself would collect and archive as much filth as it could on its opponents. It's done in Russia, it's done in the USA itself. Coffee spoke about the Hillary Clinton emails. Right? It's done all over the world. But it's particularly done in a reckless manner, and the information gathered is used recklessly, as I want to say, in undemocratic countries. And I dare argue that Ghana is one of those countries that I can consider undemocratic. You see, in the US, for example, the wiretapping laws, that was what I was referring to yesterday. Ghana actually did a modification of its telecommunication laws to include wiretapping, etc. There are wiretapping laws in places like the US. But for the state to get to wiretap a citizen, they have to go through the process and provide convincing evidence to the judges and whoever has oversight. Otherwise, those things are not acceptable in the court of law and so on. But understanding Ghana, you don't even need that information in the court of law to undermine people. All they do is leak it surreptitiously. Right? I understand there are lots of nasty videos circulating about some public figures. Who is collecting and who is distributing and who is releasing? Right? Pegasus. The acquisition of Pegasus and the use of Pegasus in this society must be frightening. And citizens must be aware of what the government is doing and confront it. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has a smart TV. Everybody has a tablet, a smart device, let's say. And those are the things which will give access to malware such as Pegasus. How do you prevent such attacks and such intrusion? Many will argue that you go to back to basic, Mango Pelter. Yes, the Mango Pelter will serve you up to a certain point. It will. But that also doesn't stop them from listening. Right? That doesn't also stop them from listening. The possibility is it will be more difficult for them to hack into your device to extract photographs and stuff that will compromise you. But there will still be voice recordings of you. Telephone companies always maintain recordings of conversations. And more so if the government requests that such recordings be done. Right? So this issue of the government spying on its citizens is an important one It is one that we have to be aware of, and we have to take the necessary steps to protect our devices and ourselves from. Like you would have heard in the previous videos, it's not as easy as we are saying it. Good? I tell people I am convinced that my devices are bugged or hacked or interfered with in some way or other. Well, I generally don't have anything to be afraid of. I don't plan espionage. We aren't. This is being malicious. What will they take from my computer or my phone to make public? A Caribbean pastime? Somebody's daughter photograph? Sometimes it might be one of their own. Huh? Or a conversation between myself and somebody's daughter. I ain't homosexual, so they ain't got nothing gay, lesbian, queer, rainbow nation they could gather on me. I can tell you that. And Caribbean man don't like to, most Caribbean men don't like to be associated with LGBTQ. And I'm one of those. I don't want to be accused of any such thing. I respect people's right to make their choices. Right? But I know there's something they won't find about me. And so I'm not afraid. I don't engage in corruption. I don't plan espionage. I'm not a criminal. And so anything they could find on my devices are innocent in my mind. Innocent doings in my mind. So I'm not afraid. I will continue to confront the state on these issues. But there's some simple things people might be able to do in terms of protecting their privacy. Like I said, some of us will go back to the mango pelters. Right? Some of us will go up technology-wise. For example, there's something that's called a virtual private network. A VPN, it masks your location. It hides your location. You could be sitting here in Boston on this program and it's showing that you are broadcasting from China. VPN has a cost. There's some free ones, like Hotspot Shield, but they don't give me a whole day's protection. Right? And so when you want to browse sensitive sites or you want to deal with sensitive information and so on, if you are dealing with that kind of stuff, then one form of protecting yourself is a VPN. VPNs are also working on Android devices and other phones. And so people can explore the use of VPNs, virtual private networks. Good? But for me, the most important way of preventing people access to the kind of information you don't want them to hear is not to discuss them on your phones and your devices. A phone call, hey, we need to talk, meet me at X place or Y place, or meet me at the usual place. Because the thing is, when you say X place or Y place too, you're giving people location to find you. Right? You're giving people location to find you. And this is the age when nobody has to be up close and personal to you to record your conversations, or to get videos, or to get photographs. Technology is so advanced that people can use all kinds of devices to record you from distances. If their intention is to kill you, well, we know that they got all kinds of high-powered weaponry being imported in this country illegally. Right? Those are things that you have to be aware of. You have to go back to the old time meet and greet and discuss. But you also have to be aware that possibilities exist that you can meet and greet and discuss and find yourselves in problems. Remember the Monroes, I think it was an army officer or former member of the Guyana Defense Force that was used to entrap the Monroes. They met up and they sat and they had their own gaffes, sometimes loose talk, as many of us will say. And that individual was recording them. And so that loose talk was used to punish the Monroes for quite a long time. I don't think that that family has overcome the trauma and everything that they had to go through under the PPP. Good? These are things we have to remind ourselves of and be aware of. How do you counter that? Citizens have a responsibility to counter the behavior of their governments when it is intruding on their privacy and affecting democracy. And while many will say that the meet and greet and so on is the best way or one of the safer ways, it is certainly one of the safer ways. That too has its risk. Because we now have in our borders, within our borders, long-range drones. And if you follow what has been happening on the international scene over the years in the fight against terrorism, for example, long-range drones have been used to identify location and target people and kill them. And so if this government wants to target you, they have in their arsenal long-range drones. And so they can pinpoint your location and they can listen to your conversation or do surveillance and all of that. Guyana simply is being a country that is being heavily surveilled right now, the citizens. Guyana got 2 spy centers, as I call them. One is in the compound of Castellani House, Homestretch Avenue and Blessingen Road. Spy center. Same place where Kanu is. There's a building in that compound there dedicated to monitoring people through the use of cameras, etc. And then there's another one at the back of the Artichoke Convention Center. That might be more modern. Right? Citizens are being watched all the time. And so they're not satisfied with watching you through the cameras that make up the smart city solution. They're not satisfied with watching movements of citizens on cameras that are connected to traffic lights and at certain junctions where all the traffic coming from particular directions and so on have to pass. They're not satisfied with that. They want to now listen to your conversations, and they now want to examine the content of your devices. And so they went and they bought Pegasus. Now, in any other country, I would believe, in any other country, citizens may very well have a right to request, because of the Freedom of Information Act, to request of government information such as where was this device, where was this software sourced from? Right? Where was this software sourced from? Who you buy it from? At what cost was it acquired? Right? What is it being used for? Certainly, things like these get ventilated through congressional hearings and so on in the US. Do we have that option in this country?
Never know, never know. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never. because your money done, you come with conniving morning. Then you had your pocket full, in a bill tell me morning. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me morning.
Yes, morning neighbor.
Morning neighbor, morning. Morning neighbor, morning. Morning, I don't want you conniving morning. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. A 2 pound note and a guilder piece. This is all the money that me walk for.
I said morning neighbor.
Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, I don't want you conniving morning.
Oh, Joseph.
For me.
Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, neighbor, morning. It is now 3 minutes past the 7 o'clock hour. I know you're not accustomed to see me this early. But take a bow. It is Wednesday. It's the 9th of February in the year 2022. Good? And you're tuned to the BUXTONIAN Morning Time. Welcome. I trust that you had a restful night last night. You had a productive day yesterday. You remain safe. I hope that you earned some money because things tight. And if things tight, what happens in society is that in most instances, people have to look for it on a daily basis. Right? We say hand to mouth. A lot of Guyanese are now returning to hand to mouth living. I don't know when this country, when the citizens of this country will catch a break. Right? For however long, the majority of the citizens has been living hand to mouth. You go out, you work, you catch a race today, and from the time you catch a race, you go into the shop. Hand to mouth. You work all month long. You collect your salaries, and within a week of collecting salaries, you get hand to mouth. As them by say, a lot of citizens, a lot of public servants in this country are hand-fearing. Right? I sure you all know what is hand-fearing. Good? It's always give me a raise, give me a blight, give me a blessing. That is where we're back in this country. But, you know, we got to do what we got to do. Because unless you're prepared to do what you have to do, the criminal and corrupt cabal will continue to take what is rightfully yours and get fattened at the master's table while you get the scraps. Good? If you don't believe me, ask Sue. Who the hell is Sue? That's a question that's going around in this society all week. Well, starting about 48 to 72 hours ago. Who the hell is Sue? I want to know who is Sue. Guyanese like a good susu. Good? But I can tell you that the mere mention of the name Sue had the powerful, or those who believe that they're powerful and they're beyond reproach, doing all kinds of sand dance and getting amnesia. And those of you who have had the opportunity of studying body language will come to understand that when you want to know if somebody is lying, you look at their body language. That body language tells you a whole lot. Right? A whole lot the body language tells you. And so when the reporter, Miss Young, I think her name is, asked your so-called vice president, what's his relationship with Sue? I am sure many of you started thinking all kinds of things. Right? You know, you got your little girl child and she's telling you she is a nice and decent child and she's faithful and she doesn't have a boyfriend and so on. And then you call the boyfriend name and she starts to write in the sand and suddenly her toes are itching her and stuff like that. That is the reaction of Jack Dio when the name Sue came up. Imagine this is a good friend of yours, or a tenant of yours, or you've known his father for so long. And when you ask about him, you suddenly got amnesia. You had to repeat the name Sue. It's like, oh shoots. Where does one come from? This is a total surprise. Sue? This one came out of the woodwork at me. But who the hell is Sue? That is what everybody wants to know. Y'all look at Jack Dio respond to the question, what's your relationship with Sue? Simple question the woman asked you though. What's your relationship with Sue? Oh, yeah. Technology sometimes get me giddy. Yes. Who the hell is Sue? We're going to find out who is Sue. Here we go.
Relationship with Mr. Sue Jerome. Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Sue Jerome?
Sue? Oh, Sue. My relationship? Nothing. He is.
You recognize the reaction there? Sue? Oh, Sue? My relationship? Now that's a classic. What I should say, delayed topic, delayed tactic. The liar repeated those questions while thinking, as people like to say, or people that say, you might go in 7 knots an hour, but it's 7 knots. In this instance, he must have been doing 100 knots. The man was overclocking his brain to come up with the right response. Yeah, listen.
Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Sue Jerome?
Sue? Oh, Sue. My relationship? Nothing. He's a tenant in my place, yeah.
And he's a good friend of yours?
Yes, yes. He is a friend of ours. His father was here from many years ago.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he lives next door to you.
Yes.
You know, he was able to arrange meetings and catch-ups with you at any point in the day. He claims
as a friend, yeah.
He claims that through his very close relationship with you, he's able to get any deal done.
Well, I don't know if that's
able to change laws for investors.
But then which law has been changed for any investor?
So Sue told us that if you want to get anything done in Ghana, you need some hookups. I'm very close with the Vice President and the other officials. The Vice President and I share a very close relationship. Also, if we do the business, he'll help out no matter what. There's no one else who can help like he does. He also said us when he's talking about prospect investors that the Vice President said he can change the Constitution, he said he can manage. Everything is good. He's already trying to help us as much as possible. Of course, I need to give back to him in return.
Yeah, but that is, I don't know about your...
Okay, well, let's talk about specific individuals. What is your relationship with Mr. Sue Jerome?
Sue? Oh, Sue. My relationship? Nothing. He is...
Who the hell is Sue? Y'all never know about Jack Dio stutters? Since when Jack Dio stutters? Since when Jack Dio fumbles to speak? Right? But is it the first time that Jack Dio is being accused of being involved in corrupt practices in government? It certainly is not the first time. It certainly will not be the last time. Jack Dio has always been accused of being a corrupt public official, and every time he's confronted with corruption or accusations, allegations of corruption, he asks you to bring the evidence. Right? In this instance, he's telling the interviewer from Vice TV, you can go to the Integrity Commission. Who controls the Integrity Commission? Who controls the Integrity Commission? Why should she go to the Integrity Commission? Next she might tell you can go to the Information Czar. Who controls the Information Czar? Come on, as they say, we big but we ain't stupid. We big but we ain't stupid. And we got a big professor in the house this morning, and I know he ain't stupid. Dr. Hinds, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'll you up a little. I see you looking a little fresh. I trust you're feeling much better from yesterday.
Yes, yes, much better. You know, the combination of allergies and sinuses and you know, but I'm fine.
You needed to be home. Because we would have carried you through by Gloria Fifi. In fact, you want bush doctor, you would have go reap two things and bile.
I have my bush here.
All right. All right. Good. So, it's been technically more than a week since you and I spoke. You've had to deal with bereavement and all of that. But on the political and national scene, the big news right now is who is Sue? The first vice president, well, not the first vice president, second vice president actually, you know. Because Mark Phillips, the prime minister, according to the constitution, is supposed to be first vice president. And so the so-called vice president, Jack Dio, was interviewed, as we see, he has been making the international rounds, being interviewed by a lot of international press and so on. But he was interviewed by this young lady from Vice News or something to the extent. And he was visibly shaken by the questions surrounding his relationship, one called Sue, an Asian national. I don't know if it's Chinese. I would assume it's Chinese. And the relationship between himself, Sue, and corrupt practices in government. I'm sure you've seen that interview. What's your take on this interview, his reactions, and most likely, as they say, is there more in the martyr than the vessel?
Well, there's a big picture here that we have to pay close attention to. There are a couple of things that are at work here. You have a government that has been running rampant, and we've been monitoring the government behavior for the almost 2 years that they've been in office. Thank heavens. We're able to do that on a daily basis. And the government is running rampant because it feels that there are no checks and balances in the system. There are no checks on what the government does. The government ignores the political opposition because it feels the political opposition is not up to performing the tasks of checks and balances. And it pays attention to some of us here on social media because of the potential to pick up things here and there, which may embarrass the government. And so they pay some attention to us. It's a government that's running rampant also because it feels that there is no international pressure on it. That is pressure from the metropoles, the Europeans, the Americans, because of the role those countries directly or indirectly played in bringing them to power. So you have a government that is less careful than it would normally be. Governments by their very nature are prone to corruption. Let's get that here. We government, they government, somebody else government. Governments by their very nature are prone to corruption. That's one. Two, governments such as Guyana's, with our newfound oil wealth, are much more vulnerable to corruption than other governments. It means, therefore, that the government of Guyana is vulnerable to international corruption. part of how the international system works, the international economic system works, is that corruption is built into it. A company comes to a country, it wants to do business, it goes through the official channels, and it also goes through the back door. That's normal in countries. As Mr. Jack Dio said as much, he said, look, we help people out. And what he means by helping people out is that people come and they come to me and I send them to people. I send them to the, particularly, an investor talks to the vice president. The vice president is known as the most powerful person in the government. He sends them to a particular agency or particular ministry. They go there and they're, they're taken care of. The vice president may not ask for money or kickback, as they call it. But that doesn't mean that the person he helps does not give kickback in one way or the other. You see, kickback can be, I ask you directly, look, I help you out according to the vice president. So you help me out, you, me. And a lot of public officials get catch red-handed, as we say. In other cases, you don't have to say that. There's the unwritten law when you're doing those transactions at those levels, that you give a kickback, and that can come in many ways. That would come in many ways, directly or indirectly. So what you have here is a government that is governing over a country and an economy that would attract that kind of bribery. The government is vulnerable, an oil-rich third world country. The government is vulnerable to bribery, more vulnerable than, let's say, other Caribbean countries. And so, if you have an arrogant government that feels is not accountable to the people of Guyana, half of them didn't vote them in. The next half voted them in, but would not care whether they commit infractions. So the government is accountable to nobody. And then you came to power with the help, with the assistance of other countries. And you feel that they too are going to be less, there will be less scrutiny from them. And so government officials are less careful in how they go about, to quote again the vice president, helping people out. So that's one thing we want to put in perspective. I think where this PPP government is going wrong is this lack of understanding of how countries like America work. While the government officially may give you a pass, there are institutions within that country, the media, for example, part of the media, very investigative, right? There may be organizations, human rights organizations, transparency organizations. They are not government, they are autonomous from the government of the United States. And they do their own scrutiny. And so often, yes, the government of America may not be officially watching you, but there are institutions in America and in Europe, autonomous from the government, but under the constitutions of these countries. They do investigative work wherever American interest is. So there are American interests in Guyana, tremendous interest. There's Exxon. And they are institutions, transparency institutions, human rights institutions, economic transparency, which cover Exxon. There are whole sections of news media in America that cover Exxon. And wherever Exxon has an interest, they're there looking to see what's going on. Because Exxon and other big companies are as powerful as the American government. You know, that's how the American system works. And so a government like the PPP, very arrogant, feels that it doesn't have to account to anybody. It goes about its business of governance in an arrogant and careless way, and did not pay attention to how the global system works, how the American system works. And so it seems to be that what happened there is that this news organization has been monitoring governance in Guyana and looking at issues like corruption. And they got a tip. No, people who investigate corruption, government corruption, will tell you it is the most difficult kind of investigation. You're investigating an individual, you can catch them easily. But when you are investigating government corruption, you have to have, unless you are able to catch them in the act through surveillance, or somebody who's part of the corruption speaks, it's very difficult to pin government down, because a government can say, as Mr. Jagdeer is saying, look, people come to me and I help them out. That's part of government. That's part of everyday governance. And even though corruption may ensue from helping them out, you cannot pin that corruption on the man. Man go to Jagdeer or any government minister, and they send that man to somebody else, and that man gets through, and through whatever channels he give a bribe. You can't pin that on Mr. Jagdeer or whoever else, because they will say, bring me the evidence to show that this man and me make a deal. But if the man is saying, I made this deal, this man is the man who can get things done, you have somebody who is part of it speaking. That's why Mr. Jagdeer was so surprised, because he did not expect that someone who he quote unquote helped out would talk. But you shut your mouth. And once somebody who is part of the corruption ring speaks, Mr. Jagdeer will tell you that Sue, what has Sue said? In fact, the report in the Stabrook News this morning is that Mr. Jagdeer is saying, Sue said, he didn't say. So the lady reporter from the investigative organization says Sue said. Mr. Jagdeer retort is that Sue said, he didn't say. Whatever Sue said or didn't say could open up a ring, a corruption ring in the government. It may not go as far as nabbing Jagdeer, because Jagdeer is a whole hand, and he would make sure that there is no direct evidence. That's why he kept saying, bring me the evidence. You come in here, bring the evidence. the evidence will come, because the first evidence the lady said is Sue. Who's Sue? Sue. He's surprised. And so the issue, as far as Mr. Jagdeo is concerned, is not whether Mr. Jagdeo is clean, because at the end of the day, Mr. Jagdeo may end up being clean and cleared. But this thing has the potential of leading the investigator to other sources of corruption in the government. That is what that body language you've seen from Jagdeo there is not so much about Jagdeo. It's about the government and widespread government corruption. This suit could be the key that unlocks the padlock that could lead to sources of corruption within the government. This has the potential. We are going to pay attention to Jagdeo, and I would advise anybody who is investigating, all right, to broaden the thing. And Aubrey Norton has already put Jagdeo on the back foot. So bring your assets and let's test your assets against your income. The pressure now on Jagdeo, as Norton and the PNC been saying that forever. But now, Mr. Jagdeo is under pressure. So again, this little key could open up a lot of doors to corruption. A lot of this stuff is documented. Remember, Sarah and international agencies, American agencies, European agencies, had done a lot of the heavy lifting as far as corruption in the previous PPP government is concerned. And they could not get the kind of conviction, they could not even get the kind of prosecution that they needed, because it's so difficult. You get the story, you get the evidence, but you don't get anybody, you don't have the conduit for bribes. And that is often in these instances what you need. What's Mr. Jagdeo's defense? Interesting. Mr. Jagdeo said, look, this juror, he came as part of a larger scheme. And the larger scheme is that China and America have a trade war. He didn't say that China and America are fighting over Guyana's wealth. He didn't say that, but he says they have a trade war. And his government is caught up in that. And so this reporter is part of the hatchet job that America wants to do on his government for Chinese support. So he has put this thing within the context of China-US trade war. Now, that may be Mr. Jagdeo's excuse, but it has opened up some very interesting questions. And the first question, we know that America is involved because America played a pivotal role at the level of the State Department, at the level of the Secretary of State, who's very high up in American government. If the Secretary of State is involved, it means that high up in, to what extent are the Chinese involved in Guyana? What role the Chinese played during the election? What role has the Chinese played after the election? Since you are saying that you are now caught in a crossfire between a quarrel between America and China, we know the role America played, we know it's honest there, we know what America played during the election. What role is the Chinese? You don't have to tell us. what role the Chinese played. Mr. Jagdeo also said something. He said the Americans in 1964 overthrew the PPP government in favor of the PNC UF government. That's true. He's not lying. But why is Mr. Jagdeo aiming his gun, his political gun, at the Americans? Just the other day, the Americans have to put in, he didn't say that. He talked about the Americans putting the PPP out of government. He didn't continue to talk about the American role in overthrowing the coalition government and putting the PPP government. He didn't say that. For obvious reasons, he's not going to say that. But he's aiming his gun at the Americans. That seems to say that there has been some breach in the relationship between the Americans and the PPP government. If one accepts Jagdeo's logic, that this girl, this reporter, this organization came with a preconceived idea that the government is corrupt. And this is part of the US-Chinese war. And he reminds that the Americans played a similar role in the 60s. Stop short of saying that the Americans played a similar role in 2010. Then he suggested, by now aiming his gun directly at the Americans, that things are regular between the Americans and them. So there may have been some kind of falling out. Now that takes us back. Now it takes us back to the phone call Mr. Todd had gotten about a year ago. Did the relations start souring then? The little hints that the Americans have been making about corruption and human rights through the ambassador, is it now making sense? So Mr. Jagdeo, in his response, is saying more than meets the eye. He's saying more than meets the eye. Let me wrap up by saying, I think is surprised at Sue being named. Now, Sue is not a man far away from Jagdeo's orbit. Sue lives in Jagdeo building. He's a tenant. Sue's father and the PPP were friends. Sue and the PPP are friends. Sue and Jagdeo are friends. So Sue is a credible, Mr. Sue is a credible source. Jagdeo knows that. He knows that. He knows that Sue is a credible source. And so he obviously was surprised. These people were not naming somebody far away from the PPP's orbit. They were naming somebody who's in the bosom of the beast. That is the body language you're talking about there. You know, you get a piece of news and you say, boy, oh shit. You understand? Shock the show. No? Because you are thinking that this is a big fish that gets nabbed here. And if Mr. Sue were to start singing more, we're in trouble. That's the body language you're seeing there. You see? So This is interesting. As the Americans would say, take out your popcorn and let me see where this leads us. It is a government that is so arrogant. It is so arrogant that it believes that it could do anything because it's accountable to nobody. And while it may have gotten through in terms of what happens internally in Guyana, it forgets that the external forces are much more formidable and that you need to be careful. I think my suggestion here is that the PPP got caught because they weren't paying attention. They were so arrogant. You know, when you walk around Georgetown and you see so many Americans in the country, or what we call loosely white people, and they come. And you don't know who is doing investigative journalism, who working for the CIA, who working for this body, who working for that. But the PPP has to allow them to come. That is the price you pay when you allow yourself to be part of regime change. And so therefore, you don't have the capacity to monitor those who are monitoring you. The coalition had that problem too, in the sense that there were people who were undermining international organizations that were undermining the coalition. The coalition had no knowledge that it was being undermined as they prepped for regime change. And I think the PPP is falling into the same trap. Although the coalition government would have been innocent, the PPP has full knowledge that they could be undermined. None other than Clement Rohi, if people remember, warned, not Rohi, Ramatara, giving a speech, which I commented on this program. He gave a speech at the Red House, warning the PPP that you are in the era where you can be put out of power. Again, Ramatar did not overtly acknowledge that the coalition was pushed out of power. He was warning the PPP. And apparently they didn't listen to Ramatar. Anyhow, I've said a lot.
Yeah, sorry about the sound. Sometimes I mute my microphone and then, big people just forget, Yes, I was saying that Dr. Hinds has really said a lot indeed. But in my mind, there are two questions or statements. One is, I saw Mark Benchcop saying that he contacted Sam Hinds, former Prime Minister and President Sam Hinds, to ask him about Sue. And he denied knowledge of Sue. Right? But here it is, we are seeing my photograph, which I have posted here. Sue, who is in the green jersey, introducing another Asian national to Sam Hinds. And Robeson Ben. Good? I don't know when this photo was taken, but I would rather suspect this was a time when Robeson Ben was Minister of Works. Right? I would rather suspect that. if you were to engage in some picture study, you will recognize the joy of having accomplished his duty on Sue's face. He's all smiling. The other Asian national is all smiling. Sam Hinds is smiling as usual. And Robson Ben is certainly not upset. Good. Now this picture here tells 1,000 words. Because as I can see it here, it is a case of Sue doing just what he claims or what the reporter claims he says he does. He introduces. He builds relationships. He is the go-between. He is the bagman. Good? And you can see he's a bagman that's well fed. His stomach is all puffy. Good? So this is, like Dr. Hinds says, deeper than we have seen. Like I suggested earlier, I asked the question, is there more in the martyr than in the pestle? Dr. Hinds has certainly agreed that there is more in the martyr than the pestle. Right? The question which came to mind, though, is recognizing that this interview was actually released to the public or posted to the public domain by Jagdeo himself or the PPP. Are they taking Guyanese for granted? Have they underestimated the intelligence of Guyanese to recognize what the real issues are in that interview? Dr. Hinds.
I wouldn't put it as crudely as that. I mean, the PPP doesn't have respect for Guyanese. I mean, you know, because like I said, this is a government doesn't care. We didn't vote for them, and those who voted for them will tolerate any nonsense. We didn't vote for them, and we can't do nothing about what they're doing. And those who vote for them can't do anything. So that's the source of disrespect. I think what you are seeing there is high-class propaganda. Look, the PPP got access to lawyers and so on. And a good lawyer would tell the PPP, look, you release this interview. If you release it, you are showing that you have nothing to hide. If the PPP didn't release it, then the news organization would have released it. And therefore, the news organization would have been able to control the narrative around the interview. What the PPP has done here is very skillfully release the interview, and so therefore get a first bite. The first, you look at Demerara Wave's headline. You look at the Stabrook News headline yesterday, not today. Jagdeo denies. Had the organization released the interview first, the headlines would have been International News Organization accuses. See, you have to understand how government work with propaganda. Not the case of taking Guyanese for granted. We are peripheral to what's potentially happening here. It's about controlling the narrative. If I release first, it means I have nothing to hide. You put it out, and then you take the position of being the victim. My government, a poor third world country, is now the victim of the US-Chinese trade war. You are controlling the narrative. Whether you respect Guyanese or don't respect Guyanese, you're controlling the narrative internally. You see, and that's extremely important, because what it does is that it gives your supporters a sense and a feeling that my government is being a victim. And that narrative of victimhood is extremely powerful. It's very powerful, because you're securing your base on your side by taking the first jump, painting yourself as innocent, and that you're being entrapped. So if this story has legs, and the news organization, when they release the full interview, release more than Mr. Jagdio and them made public, it would be Mr. Jagdio and his government versus this agency. And the government would claim that they are being undermined and destabilized by an external force. In a country like Guyana, that kind of narrative has resonance. Believe it. We are post-plantation societies. There's strong anti-imperialist sentiments within our country. And governments have used that weapon whenever they get caught. That look at these big countries that are, undermining us. It has resonance. So the PPP, by putting that thing out first, they have already secured the support of their base, because their base is likely, more than likely, to believe that the government, the party, is a victim of external intervention. Now, like they say, there are unintended consequences, because this side of the aisle, our side of the aisle, can say, we told you all so. And it didn't start with soup. It started in the run-up to the 2020 election. We are in for interesting times in Guyana, as we political commentators and the political scientists would like to say, because Mr. Sue could be the key for a lot of things. We don't know the role the Chinese played in the 2020 elections. If Mr. Jagdio is saying the Americans are coming after me and my government because of the Chinese, then could we learn that the Chinese were more in bed with the PPP than we thought? Huh? This thing may lead us to some added information about that regime change in 2020.
Indeed it may, and I think it is also going to lead us to more information on corruption. In marketing, especially telemarketing, they say the first person who speaks after a proposition is made becomes the loser, right? And so you'll find a telemarketer will call you and make a proposition to you and stay quiet all the time. Because the first person who speaks loses. Because they then give the other person the opportunity. Let me see, am I getting volume? Yes. It's kind of low though. I wonder why. Good. They give the other person the opportunity to counter offer heavily. Right? In this instance, Jagdio jumped out in front, releasing this thing and making denials. Do you believe that the next step is that the People Advice News or whatever it's called will be releasing the evidence? Can we now expect?
Yes, yeah, but you see, put out there? Yeah, but be very careful. Don't compare politics to market. Look, the PPP objective is to remain in government. Whether it gets skinned up by Sue or don't get skinned up by Sue, at the end of the day, the PPP is going to say, will this bring my government down? And I'm saying by taking first jump, you're securing the sympathy of your base, which is key to keeping you in government. You may get skinned up and the world will know that you're corrupt. And the FPNU and the AFC will blister you and so on. At the end of the day, if you are able to keep your base, then you stand a very good chance of not being derailed out of power. So it's very tricky to compare politics to market. Market got rules. All they tell you the market don't have rules. I think Courtney Blackman, I once interviewed him, former economist Ambassador, Barbadian ambassador, he said, if it's a market, it has rules. And if it doesn't have rules, it's not a market. And he said there's nothing like free market. A market is not free, right? A market got rules. Politics don't have rules. And insofar as you have what they call the rule of law, it is easier to undermine the rule of law than to undermine the market rules. I mean, if you engage in quote unquote unfair trade, they take you to the WTO. If you engage in unfair politics, there is no equivalent unless you commit mass genocide. They'll take you to the World Court. You know, but there are things you can get away in politics which you can't get away with in the market. So it's always tricky to compare business to politics. At the end of the day, for the PPP, even if it's bloodied by what comes out of this, would it be to the point where it loses support and loses power? That is the key question for me.
Final question on this issue. And a lot of persons have been commenting in the society basically. Why did it have to take a foreign journalist to ask Jack Joe these hard questions? Why not the locals?
The answer to that is simple. The media in Guyana is part of the politics of Guyana. Our media are very partisan. Why are we asking that question? It may be just a rhetorical question if people are asking that. As a result of regime change, the media are very partisan. Most of the media have gone along with the PPP's narrative. And they're left with that in their hand. You look at the main media houses and look at how they cover the PPP. Kaichor News may be the only one that has made a slight shift. But Stabroek News is firmly there in the PPP camp. They write some editorials that are critical. But by and large, they've all held on to that narrative that the PPP won the election. And the logic of that support for that narrative, take them, they're not. None of those papers and media houses would do any investigative journalism vis-a-vis PPP governance. It's not going to happen. Because our papers are run not by editorial boards, they're run by owners. The owners of the PPP, of the Stabroek News, call the shots. The owners of Kaichor News call the shot. The owners of the Demerara Wave call the shot. You don't have any independent bodies in those newspapers. So the fact that they're not doing any investigative journalism is willful. Look at the way all of them cover the PPP. And then, of course, you know, newspapers and media houses in a place like Guyana survive by government patronage. No paper survives by sales or by ads from the private sector. Without government ads, you cannot run a media, a profitable media entity in Guyana. And so they're also cognizant of that. And even if they wanted to shift from that initial support of the PPP, they're now wondering that the PPP could pull ads from there as they did to Stabroek News when they were in power before. So no, you're not going to get that kind of investigative journalism from the Guyana media.
Good. And as we talk about the compromise of the media houses and so on, I mean, we can go on and on with that compromise, and we can talk more about the corruption. But corruption is from high to low in this government, I can tell you that. Just the other day, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is into contract work. He told me he was called by a particular NDC to do some work for them, fixing something that was knocked out of place. He did his work. He submitted a charge of $30,000. When he was called for his payment, he had to sign a voucher for $60,000. When he asked, buy a 30,000, I tell her how this thing reach 60. They say, oh, we have to get paid too. Right? And this is the kind of corruption that you're dealing with, because as I said, the fish rots from the head. I was so surprised, as I said. You didn't add on $10,000 or 50. You didn't go 50% or 25%. They inflated the bill by 100%. So imagine what's happening in this country.
Kiraki, I know you're partisan, but always cover yourself. Corruption is endemic in Guyana. The PPP takes more advantage of it than other governments. Because the PPP can go tomorrow, I will tell you that corruption that you're talking about will remain there. You know? So you can make your point without giving the impression that corruption starts under the PPP and ends under the PPP. It leads you down somewhere that is not credible. Corruption is endemic in Guyana. But because of the PPP's politics of domination, the corruption reaches tremendous heights under them. That is exacerbated under a PPP government because of the nature of PPP politics. But corruption is endemic in Guyana. There are PPP people who engage in corruption without direction from Freedom House, without direction from Jack Dio or Irfan. They engage in corruption because they know that the government will not monitor and punish them. Corruption has a life of its own in all societies of the world. In particular, societies like ours. Small people don't earn a lot in terms of their wages and salaries, and so they're susceptible to that. So that is why we say there's official corruption and there's unofficial corruption. You know, so I just say, you know, we know that we are partisan, but let us be more responsible than the PPP and say we live in a society in which corruption at all levels of our society is endemic. But even the nature of the PPP is exacerbated.
Indeed, it is. And when it has to be exacerbated in because of the actions of the PPP very well. Because remember the closing down of SARA. When SARA was closed down, that agency had a case before the court against Jagdio and Ashley Singh. Am I right?
Yes.
Let's talk now about the dominance of the PPP as we continue to talk about governance and so on in the country. We noticed that in the last budget, in the budget which is still being debated in Parliament, the Czar of Information, Senior Charles Ramsden Senior has been retained as Czar of Information. And his budget is more than the budget granted to the office of the Leader of the Opposition. As a matter of fact, the amount granted to the office of the Leader of the Opposition has been reduced further from the last budget. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is that there we go. It is why our country will have a difficult time developing, regardless of who is in power. And I have to say that even as I'm a supporter of the opposition, you know, because when the opposition comes in, there's going to be great pressure on the opposition. The coalition gets back in power. There'll be great pressure on them to seek revenge. Great pressure on them to seek revenge. And this is the cycle. This is the cycle that countries like ours have to live with. And it takes enlightened leadership to break that cycle. The PPP is engaged in politics of revenge because real and imagined discrimination they said happened under the APNUFC government. So they concoct this narrative of real and imagined discrimination. And so they are engaging in counter-discrimination. And the next government that comes in will be under pressure if it doesn't want to engage, and it leads us down the road. That is why, you know, a country like ours is always in trouble. Always in trouble. You cut the money for the leader of the opposition. And when the leader of the opposition becomes the leader of the government, he's a human being, she's a human being. And he or she may not be disposed towards seeking retribution, seeking revenge, but politically they would be under pressure. A lot of our people are saying, look how they lock up APNU AFC leaders. When APNU and AFC were in there, they did audits. There was all the evidence that these people were corrupt, but they never pulled them before the courts and embarrassed them and give them all them big bail that they're giving people. And if we come back to power, our government would be under the same pressure to seek revenge. We often take the human element out of politics. It's there. It's there. So these things about discrimination against opposition places and so on are they're normative. What this PPP does is that it is in your face, it's bare face about it. You know, it happens under all governments. Our charge against this PPP is not that it is doing what other governments didn't do. It's that it is barefaced, it's intentional, it's disrespectful.
And so that disrespect results in that cut in the leader of the opposition's office budget.
Yeah,
It also barefacedly gives to the wife of Irfan Ali $50 million, almost twice as much as the leader of the office of the to distribute sanitary napkins.
Yeah, no, what I know of PNC people, you know, and I have to admit that I know them a little bit more than I know of PPP people. What I know of PNC people, they will say, you know, look, we gotta, even those who would say we gotta get back at these people, would say, oh man, the thing will look bad, man, you don't do it so. There is part of culture here, eh? You know, man, the thing gonna look bad. So we do it, but it gonna look bad and so on. Remember when that tape was leaked with Mrs. Lawrence saying that she implying just PNC people? How embarrassed the PNC was about that. But if a similar tape is leaked from the PPP would not be embarrassed. In fact, they would watch your face and tell you, and so what? That is the difference between the two sides. It's not that one side is angel and one side is devil. Government and power cannot have a way of pulling human beings in a certain direction. But if you have a moral compass in your individual life, that moral compass sometimes serve as a check on where absolute power takes you. And that is why I said the other day that the PPP has no mother. It has no mother to scrub its teeth, brush your hair, bathe them, take out boo-boo from your eye. They don't have a mother. And because they don't have a mother, I use that mother as a metaphor for they have no shame. That is the difference between the two sides, is that, I don't want to be associated with any narrative that says that another government will come in and that government would not engage in corruption. And then when we find out, we start crying and feel shame. We can't criticize the other. Corruption and government are inseparable, especially in countries that get money like Guyana get money now, and so on. All right? And one has to depend on formal checks and balances. But one also has to depend on the political culture of the people in government. And if the people in government, like the PPP, and got no proper political culture, no proper upbringing, you are going to find that these things are exacerbated under the PPP. And so it raises larger question beyond criticizing them and saying that it raises larger question about the future of our country and how we are going to prevent this kind of thing from going on in perpetuity. Those are big questions that you see, sometimes we confine ourselves to critique of party and government. Without taking into consideration that party and that government comes from the society. Those people who are in the PPP government, they didn't come from Mars, they come from Guyana. And we have to clean our mess in our country. It's a responsibility of all of us as Guyanese, or else we are never going to become this developed country that we aspire to be and that we think oil will be for us. No, we have to broaden our analysis of what we see and hear before us. There's a role for party propaganda. There is a role for opposition propaganda and opposition critique. But there's a larger role to cleanse our society of what has become a monster thanks to the PPP exacerbation of what normally would happen in the society.
Thank you for that. It's now 10 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. You're tuned to the BUXTONIAN Morning Time. I'm chatting with Dr. Hinds on Sue. Who the hell is Sue? The reduction of the budget for the office of the leader of the opposition and so on. Now, let me remind you that February also is Black History Month. I know there are lots of notable Africans, blacks we call them, who have said they don't want a month to observe the history. You can't package our history in a month. But the fact is we have a month where we zoom in and we focus and we promote the black culture. So we are in Black History Month. Dr. Hinds, you want to make any reference to the significance of this period before we mobilize?
Black History Month in Guyana has become a victim of our deeply divided politics. We are not going to have any full-throttled observance of Black History Month, even among Africans. Because to say I am black and to say that Black history is important is to open yourself to be called a racist. Somebody in this morning's papers, I wrote something on Black history this weekend, and it was carried by Stabrook News and the Village Voice. And somebody wrote in this morning's Stabrook News, Dr. Hinds started well, but his article deteriorated. And then he went on to talk about Black history and so on and so on and so on and so on. He doesn't say how Dr. Hinds' letter deteriorated. But Dr. Hinds' letter deteriorated because I move from American Black history and talk about Black history within the context of Guyana. our brothers on the other side don't want to hear that. Insofar as I can talk about Black history as it relates to America and somewhere else, they're fine with it, right? The minute I move and I say, let's talk about Black History Month within the context of Guyana, Dr. Hinds deteriorated. So the man this morning in the paper said, Dr. Hinds started well, he deteriorated, and he proceeded to talk about Black history in America, in Canada, and England. But that's what we want. We don't want to talk about Black history or Black anything in Guyana. And as I usually say, kiss my back something.
I always try to pronounce that word. Is it derriere?
Is it what?
Is it derriere or derriere? How is that word pronounced?
Which word?
The black something.
I'm a good Christian.
I seriously.
That is why, in keeping with the S word, in keeping with Sue, I say, well, my black Sue is a black Sue.
I got you. I perhaps have been missing the. I was going to the Is that's not colloquial. That's a good English term. But you were going colloquial. All right, we can't use that. The lines are open 6225933 is the number to call. Let's talk the thing. Who the hell is Sue, man? 622. Do you know of any Sue stories? Do you know Sue? Have you been in the same bed with Sue? In the same place with Sue? It was always alleged that the Chinese were being facilitated here by the PPP through bodies. Body Shivraj, I think is what we call him. And all these supermarkets opening up all across the land and so on. Many are of the opinion that in some way, shape, or form, the PPP or bodies has shares in them. I know someone alleges that Jiling, the motorcycle company here, is part owned by Jack Dio. So there are lots of Sue stories. The name might not be popular, right? The name might not be popular, but there are all of these stories out there about Sues. Sue can come in any way, shape, or form. Call it live, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Happy Wednesday to you guys. I just want to mention some old parable, what I was taught from a young age. Number one, during Jagdio, it is time. Moon does run till they catch it. Bucket does go to well until the bottom leave it. And I like what Mr. David has said, something Washiba take it. It is the fact that PPP, it's in the DNA about this nonsense. And it's time for when coalition get into office is to clean up this mess. Because it's a terrible mess affecting all Guyanese at home and abroad. God is still with Guyanese people. Why? He exposed them again and again. And not the PPP God exposing, he exposing the CARICOM leader who went to Guyana and put Jagdio in office, the European, the British, the Canadians and Americans is a slap in all of them face today to see the black man, Mr. Granger. He was spotless. He was clean at the health of the Board of Health. And I put a dangerous man inside there. Let me see what the Prime Minister going to send out from Barbados. The truth going to ought or no. What goes around comes around. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for calling. Lines remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. Let me see if there are any voice notes. All right, no voice notes. Thus far, no voice notes. I don't remember us, Dr. Hinds, you and I talking about the recent moves to that would bring Oregon closer to entering Parliament. I think it was last week that Dr. Nicolette Henry mentioned to the Parliament that she was resigning.
Brother Kadaki, out of respect for some of the people in the PNC, all I would say this morning is that thing is fast becoming a comic tragedy. Out of respect for some good people over that side, I wouldn't go into any full-throttled analysis of what's happening there, except to say that it's fast becoming a comic tragedy.
Calling live, good morning. Calling live, good morning.
Good morning, Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hinds.
Good morning, sis.
Yes, I know if you were still in the country, Black History Month would have been so powerful because you guys always involved into that. But I don't know. Maybe we gotta still push and continue to try to have it. Get more books and all this kind of stuff in the country. Anyway, the problem is if the opposition go back in there, they have to go through all the books, all who have done wrong, put them through the court. You're not taking no side, you're not taking favors. You have to do what you have to do for the country. This is something you're not taking favoritism. Just as what America does. When America see anyone committed a crime, regardless if in politics, police force, wherever you are, they put them out there. They do not care. So nobody cannot say that you're coming back with revenge. It's the right thing to do to make your country get better. As my grandmother used to say, when a child do something, do not dip your head between your lap. Correct them immediately. Because you don't want when you climb up the court step and they come and they say, the judge give them a sentence. They call the mother over, the grandmother, for them to bite out your ears. No, you don't want that. You have to correct it from now. So the next government go in there, Dr. Hinds, I hope you go into with them to remind them, don't make them forget. Right is right, wrong is wrong, regardless of who is in there. The right thing needs to be done, and you have to put pressure on people. So, as Mr. London was saying last night, you have to get brilliant minds. People come together. If you forget, the next person would not forget. You have to get everybody on board. The country, the people must be involved to say, well, Dr. Hinds, no, remember last year this had happened. No, we don't want that. Let's put this together. You have to get people involved. Don't keep people out. All right, Dr. Hinds and Kadaki, you guys have to put pressure and talk to the opposition. Let them know the right thing, what to be done. You're not taking favors. You're not taking curry favors. It's the right things that need to be done. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you. Thank you.
Calling live, good morning.
Good morning. Do you guys realize, morning Dr. Hinds, do you guys
Good
realize
morning.
that there's a new name that is added to black thief, black police, black everything? Every time Jack Deere gives an interview with someone, and he always got to talk about the dictators. That's the next name for black thieves, right? Then you got to talk about return of democracy. Right? If he talk, dictator should be a word which will burn his mouth every time he uses it. Because if he was not a dictator, you, Kadaki, would not have been locked up for opening up your mouth on the radio, to going out there and protest for people's rights, and the others who have been locked up just because he said something. Right? He should never ever call such a word. And number two, for them to talk about us, we must not talk about black history as it relates to Guyana. What's the problem with them? But you must talk about Indian arrival. No, black history is our thing, and we must speak about it. Wherever blacks are, we got history. I don't care what part of the world it is. We got history. And the last thing, Rural Johnson might not be the messenger that we like, but he coined a word which I must agree with him, and that word is calling Mr. Granger a Afro-Saxon. I like that word, and he was perfect on saying that. He might not like the messenger, but that piece of message was correct. Talking about the elites and those and the middle class, only certain people should hold position under him. I think so. He was correct. Anyhow, gentlemen, have a good day.
Thank you, Carter. Voice note.
Good morning to you, two gentlemen. You know what? Let me just say it. The PPP is poor people's problem. That's what the word PPP stands for. The rich and famous don't have a problem with them. You check and see. Whenever a rich person or a person that has money, you have to make a comment or anything, or they hear comments or anything, the first thing that they say, look, we don't have time. All of them is the same thing, and that they finish with that because they have it like that, and they know they could deal with it. But the poor man in this country, feeling it, dying from hunger, while they are having a nice time. Anyhow, my take and what frets me more is the budget. That budget is such a disaster for Guyanese people. I don't know how those people are living with themselves and how they sleep at nights. They don't want scrutiny. They don't want to spend the money where the people of Guyana will be having a fair take and a fair share of the pie. They just with infrastructure, bridge, road, and you look to hell if they come out next year, nothing is being done. All the money is finished, and many of the things aren't finished. You understand? You're seeing it with your naked eye. They just don't want scrutiny. And that speaker, he sit there and ready to pass everything, despite it has a lot of flaws. You mean to tell me there is nothing nobody could do about these people? Nothing cannot be done about them? The opposition is a big part in the country. You understand? And they cutting opposition money, and people silent and quiet and having a nice time with this? Come on, man. Come on. Guyanese, wake up. Wake up before it is too late. Bye.
Thank you for that voice note. Calling you live, good morning.
Good morning, Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hinds.
Morning.
A few short things. The first of which has to do with one of the callers had asked earlier, why don't they lock up those when they do go back into power? Why would the coalition go after those people who are currently in government? Now, one of the things I want to say about that is simple. The thing is, the coalition always tend to walk a thin line with the supporters they have. In as much as they have more Afro-Guyanese than Indo-Guyanese, they want to tread a thin line so as not to show bias. But let me say this. The PPP is on the other side of that stick. They don't care crap about the Black People Party. They know they have them as rubber stamp, and so they display all.
I think we lost that caller there. Let's play a voice note.
Good morning, Kadaki and Dr. Hinds. I just want to mention that in an international forum, the president of Guyana mentioned repatriation.
Call on the line.
Yes, I'll hold.
And how close it was to him. Now we had the budget. I would like to know if anything was in place to look at that, and if any committee was set up. Seeing that Guyana has oil reserve, Guyana has the money, is there anything that he put in the budget for reparation?
Call in live, good morning.
Morning, Kadaki, and morning, Dr. Hinds. Great program in Morning Guyana. Now, what we have to understand as a people, we are always the one who is getting beat down, but always we appease others because of fear. Here is it that you've got, when the coalition was in power, afraid to do things because, as previous callers have said, we want to be on the moral high ground of not doing things, not locking up others for the wrongdoing, to actually be acceptable on the other side, that yeah, they come in and they didn't see and they didn't do. We have failed our people by just being WASP. I mean, how is it that the PPP is able to do what they're doing year after year and we just sit and take it? I mean, it got to be something wrong with us mentally. We don't get up, we don't fight. You know, my strong language is that we stupid. How is it, and I listened to the press conference yesterday for the PNC, and the question was asked about that same budget being cut to 27 million, 37, and I think Mr. Norton danced around the answer. He danced around saying that the PPP is illegal for fear of what? And that's our problem. We simply don't have the gumption to hit people when you get hit back. And we expect our people to not stray. We've got to pull together our people to show strength. And we so far have shown weakness. And my thing is always going to be, when the PPP was in power for 23 years, what have we gained as a people? Strengthening ourselves to combat them. And it seems we're going down that same road if we don't do anything different. And what we are doing is expecting to pray our problems that somebody's going to come, pray that, you know, for some reason, white baby Jesus is going to come and help us. We've got to do better than what we're doing. And we have failed our people in terms of bringing our heritage and bringing our mightiness as an African people to the forefront, and not let others dissuade us when we bring up our Africanness and how powerful we are as a people. And that's what we do, because we haven't taught our children anything. Do our children in Guyana know our rich history, I doubt whether they do, or else they wouldn't be acting this way. And I think we all have a duty to teach one, to talk about our Africanness, our greatness, each and every day. Not wait till friggin' February, which is my birthday month, to do that. No. So I urge my African brothers and sisters, diaspora, Guyana, to speak to their children, to speak loud and clear about who we are and the greatness in our people. And I do not see that happening. And, you know, I listened to the program Politics 101, and that was such great message that Dr. Phillips had said in terms of the education of what the Indians, the native Indians, as well as the Indians that came from India, what they got from Guyana. And Africans are still can't even mention these things for fear that, well, we're going to sound racist. To hell with that and what those other people think. We need to get our just due, and what Dr. Phillips has said need to be broadcast day in and day out, to our people.
Thank you, Carl.
We need to get a spot. Thank you.
Voice note.
Good morning, Kadaki and Dr. Hinds. I just want to mention that in an international forum, the
We are
president.
that one. Wrong one being played.
Good morning, Dr. Hinds and Kadaki.
Call over the line.
The coalition should not be placed in the same category as the PPP. If I understand Dr. Hinds correctly, he said that when APNU returns to power, they may be tempted to seek revenge or pressure to do so. I don't think the coalition will engage in revenge politics. They suffered for many years under the PPP, and they did not resort to revenge when they were in power, even though they had the opportunity and evidence to do so. The PPP is a different type of animal, and the people should not be led to believe that the coalition will behave like them. The coalition must go after PPP criminals when they return to power. And I don't want the public to get the impression that when they do so, it's revenge. As it is now, the PPP arrests, then search for the crime, and from what I am seeing, people are cleared after they go to the court. I think that's what I'm seeing right now. So I don't want the PPP and the APNU to be placed in the same category. Thank you.
Call it live. Good morning. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good morning to Kedaki, and glad Dr. Hinds is up out of under the weather. Anyway, now two things. Kedaki, I'd like to know if you are able to go through that little booklet that I sent to you. Anyway, about you talk 2 days on this Pegasus spyware. The Pegasus spyware, it is bad, yes, but it is a good. Because the spyware ain't gonna only spy on me, you, Dr. Hinds, and Sharon. The spyware, you see, Pegasus is a winged animal, and it opens its wings. And that spyware is going to bring in from outside and inside. Hence, all those things that is going on outside. Because the spyware is attached to Guyana, it will bring it up to the surface, and then the whole world who could log in and see what is going on is going to put it out there, and the entire world will know what is going on here. The big oil giant that is out there, Exxon with all levels, so, oh, we don't have no thing with politics. Exxon is going to be combing Guyana with a fine-tooth comb, because Exxon got to protect what it got out in the ocean. So with Exxon out in the ocean and with Pegasus,
the spyware. It is not only bad for us because once we ain't doing stupidness anywhere, we ain't got problems. Once we ain't got skeletons, we ain't got problems. So now, Pegasus and Exxon has become a big belt on the backs of the installed government. And if you listen to talk that is coming up of the big international bodies, they are now getting the full view of what is going on with the fraudulent regime. So we ain't got no problem with the spy, the Pegasus. At least me does do my little life and everybody does see what I do it. Coming back to talking about what is expected and so we have all got to, oh yes, with this thing about Africans. We are Africans and lots of us take a back step. And I don't care who say I am racist. I'm African to the core. And I don't like throw down my history to please anybody. And if you call yourself, you look at the stamina of us. When we came here on the Middle Passage, what we endured to get here, traveling at the bottom of the boats, chained down in the most inhumane conditions, we are a strong people. All the rest who came here, except the Amerindians who come up across in the Bering State, and those who are Africans and come across and come down and live habitated into the southern parts of the world. All the things they came across the Bering State. The rest of people who came here, they traveled as people in the ships. And once we, as Africans, could have undergone that type of passage coming across, we strong. And I don't care who hates us for talking about what we went through as a people. We should take offense from what they are saying. I don't care, I don't concern who say what. I am African to the core. And I promote an African show and I try as much as possible. The materials that I use for my show, it is fully African. You would hardly hear me doing an English song in my show. Now I'm even writing my own poems to bring out the quality of us as Africans. And I don't care who say I'm racist. I am African. I'm a black woman and I'm proud to be a black woman. Call me racist, I'm being called all of that. It don't bother me. So we got to handle this thing with this issue. I'm glad it's out there. And as you rightly said, Kadaki, when you want to note a person's facial expression, if you go into a court, the magistrate and the judge puts you, the accused, in a box. And as they are doing whatever question is being posed, they look at your expression, your body language. And body language has a lot to do with the answers you give. That's why lie detectors pick up when somebody's lying. Because your body language is what they're marking you on. And when it comes to journalists, that was a journalist. That is journalist. That is quality of journalist. Not like what we got in Guyana. The person listened and they asked questions pertaining to what was being said. When they don't answer, they ask questions that could bring out what they want to put out in the public domain. And they had to ask the question about this issue. They had to. Because when these people are doing things, they think it's only we alone, their business is also being highlighted. And when it comes to a phone, I got phone. And many times, if I know I got to call somebody, when I go to town, I walk with my phone. But when you see I don't have to talk to nobody, my GPS tracking me out, because it know me and I got me way. So that is my talk this morning.
Thank you, Randall.
And Dr. Hinds, I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your call.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't mention.
Lines remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. Voice note is here. I hope it's for public consumption.
Hi, good morning, Kadaki, and good morning, Dr. Hinds and everyone else. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. The people are afraid to go out and protest because the police will put them in prison. And no one is there.
Call over the line.
As a leader with the people. Mr. Granger didn't believe in protest. And if you notice, it's a trend. Mr. Armon didn't believe in protest. He said protest doesn't bring anything, or what is it he said? So now we're seeing Mr. Norton, is there. And it looks like he doesn't believe in protest either. He's coming out and doing the same thing, actually, what Mr. Armon used to do. Press conference. Talk, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I'm tired. I'm tired calling for protest. I'm tired because America running the show down there. And Jack Dio. So, as long as everyone is getting paid, they're comfortable. And the people suffering. Look at the budget. 27 million. And the opposition even kick up a storm. They just come out, press conference and talking nice. And yeah. Thank you. That's my take. I'm just tired. Don't want to come out and call people.
Call it live. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Kadaki. Good morning to Dr. Hinds. I'm saying, people are calling on North if he gets into power to lock up these people, right? That involving corruptions and so forth. What I'm saying is that we have to lock up these people. We have to start with a reform with the court. We have to start a judicial reform. We have to get the court in order because the court is so biased these days, right? They are more controlled by this present government. So we have to start with the court, right? We can't go to the court and we get cases against these people, and when we go to the court, there is no evidence, right? Or the judges, they're so biased, or the magistrate, they're so biased, right? That they just want to, they have pledged allegiance to the PPP government. So we have to start with the court. We cannot go to the court unless if we clean up the courts. That's my take. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's now 40 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. You tune to the BUXTONIAN morning time. The lines remain open. 6225933 is the number to call. Dr. Hinds, you want to add anything to the discourse?
No, I think the callers are expressing themselves, and for the most part, they're on target. One caller did ask whether there is anything in the budget for reparations. Yes, the government gives a subvention for reparations because the government has signed on to the CARICOM embrace of reparations. So I know there was always a small amount there for reparation, and I assume that it's still there in the government. One of the questions I forgot to ask Eric Phillips last night, but I'm sure that that there's a small subvention there for the reparations committee.
Good morning.
Good morning, morning, Kadaki and Dr. Hinds. Two quick things.
Morning.
The first has to do with the fact that people are clamoring for pressure to be put on the PPP when they get demitted out of office. There are two things you have to consider there. One has to do with what goes on currently. The blacks who are in the PPP, the chief cook and bottle washer of the PPP cares nothing about them. They have no say. Phillips and them have no say. Onish Wardle and them no say. They are just figureheads, or puppets as we may call them. On the opposition side now, the coalition, they have to walk a thin line because they cannot treat the Indian supporters with such disdain as the PPP treats the black people in its organization. So when you're thinking in terms of the coalition getting into power, they will go after those Jezebels in the PPP. It will be a long wait. I hope Ben Norton gets there as president. He negate that kind of nonsensical thinking. You go after all scamps, irrespective. And the other thing too I want to talk about, why are they running up the Supreme Court step with respect to all the wrongdoings that are taking place in Guyana? The PPP now is just operating unhinged. They do everything illegal. No committees, nothing to do whatever they want. They're just doing what they want to do as to reinforce the fact that Guyana is a lawless state. I don't understand why are they running up the steps. They have a battery of lawyers all over Guyana. Why are they going up the steps to put a halt on some of the things that are taking place? All these fat cats in the people doing full in their pockets to the extent now that Sue becomes a noted name all over the world now. Who is Mr. Sue? This is disgusting. One of the people full in their pockets and the others are left to starve. This cannot work. The other thing too, it would be most honorable if that dispensation that took place yesterday between on Politics 101 with Mr. Phillips be aired again. Oh my God, that was so much wisdom. Guyanese need to hear that theme over and over. It was a blessing. It was soothing to the ear to hear what Mr. Phillips and the doctor did yesterday. It was so refreshing, and people need to be cognizant. And just before I go, Kadaki, the word is derriere. That's how it's pronounced. Derriere. It's a French word with an English pronunciation. Derriere, buttocks, backside. So we understand that. So you guys have a wonderful day, and you take care.
Thank you, caller. Not I say I can be ignorant when I want to be. Yeah. You know, like some people say Validorian, eh? Or is it valedictorian? The lines are at 6225933 is the number to call. It's not 9 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. I'm going to take one last call. Okay, there seems not to be any. Dr. Hinds, you can wrap up, sir.
Yeah, thanks. I want to thank the callers who looked at the program last night, and I agree with them. It's the kind of program that we all should look at. So I suppose you will rebroadcast it at some point for those who didn't catch it. And tonight we're continuing with our Black History Month series, the State of African Guyanese. We are going to have Vincent Alexander and Miss Olive Sampson from ITPADA G to do a program on the State of African Guyanese.
And that's on KAMSTV at what time?
At 6:30. 6:30.
Good. Thank you for that, Dr. Hinds. Let me say, those people who recognize the, well, all of you tune in, you share on Facebook. Let me encourage you to share outside of Facebook, because you can actually do it. I don't know how many of you are aware that you can do it. But you go to the program and you click share and you click other options. Note, when you are tuned into the program, you click share, you click other options, and you will get the opportunity to share on WhatsApp. When you click on share on WhatsApp, it takes you to a page that gives you a link. You copy that link and you paste it into your WhatsApp and you're able to share the program. Right? Remember here, the important thing is sharing, sharing, sharing. Because this is our platform. But our message has to get wider than the platform. Good? For as much as you consider the message important, it is also important to share it. And I want to encourage you to also continue to support, not only by sharing the program, but by also sharing resources which will help us to keep the program going. I mentioned yesterday that I started a feeding program last Friday for currently 20 students, 6th graders, common interest students as we call it. And I'm going to continue to do that program. And again, if you would like to aid in the continuity of that program, feel free to contact me and let's discuss how you can assist. Normally I would not have taken this call, but let's take it. Call A Live. Close off the day for us quickly.
I'm in absolute violation of the rules here, but I just wanted to note really quickly as you're wrapping up, one of the things that, so first of all, very, very good program today, extremely informative, and I would encourage everyone that, I think we have over 756 listeners on the call to really share the actual program so others can be able to obtain this information. But as a quick suggestion for my brothers and sisters at home that someone noted about the fear of protest, there are several mechanisms for us going about exposing this government and really punctuating on the interview that Jagdeo just recently did. I think all of us or someone, and I'm going to certainly be proactive in doing it, should certainly try to reach out to Vice, the Vice TV, and if all of us can be able, once we get the information, as citizens, we can reach out, whether it's by email, something, to create traction and to share about our awareness, not only in response to what Jagdeo indicated, which all of it we knew were a number of lies that he told, but to be able to communicate to them what is really happening in Guyana, because to me this is an opening and we must maximize and capitalize on this opening. And I think if citizens become very much proactive, not only in the mechanism of protest, if that is truly obstructive in Guyana, we find other ways to be able to create attention to what is happening and to provide information, empirical data and information as individual citizens. I think it will definitely go a long way, because I don't believe from what we saw in that interview on yesterday or whenever it was aired, that is the end of it. And so we must now ignite the fire and be able to create even greater interest to that journalist, so that they will be able to go looking and digging deeper for more information about this government and how corrupt their function is today. So thank you so much. I don't want to hold it up, but have a blessed day, everyone.
Thank you, caller. And so yes, I repeat, share, share, share. Click on share once you're in the program. When the program finishes now, for example, if you click on share, it will give you other options. Click on other options. You can choose WhatsApp. It will give you a link to share so people can access the program via WhatsApp. You can do the same thing while the program is live in the morning, right? So please do that and let's get the message wide and far. Have a great day. Stay safe. I want to leave you with one that was requested by one of our regular viewers and supporter. And this one, oh Lord, you know the Chinese don't play, right? The Chinese don't play. Neither the Jamaicans. The Jamaicans put music to everything. This one is called
But see, Miss Mira, with that, Miss smell in your kitchen, they bun some, man.
Me God, that's some fried dumpling you have been up on the fire, sir.
Some fried dumpling. Well, I used to love the fried dumpling a lot, you know. But since I have the problem with the self-raising flour, I don't socialize with it no more. What we call it? Don't touch your style. Do one touch your style, tell a friend them. Don't touch your style. Do one touch your style. Don't touch your style. Do not touch your style, tell a friend them. Don't touch your style. Do one touch your style. Will be some rice, some peas, and some broad beans stew. So me buy one coconut with one bongla kalalu.
One bongla kalalu?
One bongla kalalu. Carrot and me, I go give me home and name so. When I see where she do, me have to read Psalms too.
Then you mean she do it so bad you have to read Psalms too?
Read Psalms too, me have to read Psalms too. She burn up the rice and chunk the kalalu.
Junk the kalalu?
Chunk the kalalu. What am I doing with a woman like so?
A woman like who?
A woman like so. Fi give me carrot juice mixed with special brew.
So she give you carrot juice mixed with special brew?
Give me carrot juice mixed with special brew. Then she get up from morning, no give me no tea. Then she lock up me house, throw away me key. Mash up me settee and me one TV.
You mean the color TV where you got trust on HP?
The color TV where me got take by HP. Lord have mercy, what is this for me? I soon take it to heart and go drown in a sea.
Then you mean you wouldn't take yourself go drown in a sea?
Drown in a sea, me have to drown in a sea. What we call it? Don't touch your style, don't touch your style, yes. Don't touch your style, me say don't touch it. Me have to think positive, me can't think negative. You ball up off the woman, so she attractive.
Then I wish man she live.
Now down a Stonebridge, over 2 years now, me a send her a college. And the woman can boil little camel porridge. Every morning she get up and I make clear sausage. Yes, don't touch your style, don't touch your style, yes.